And we are live. Hi, this is Dazza Greenwood at the MIT Media Lab, and one of the co-chairs with um, two of the other co-chairs who I'll ask to introduce themselves in about 4 seconds, of the W3C Blockchain Workshop that we're hosting here at MIT at the end of the month. And this is the kickoff hangout of Hangouts that we hope to do weekly, that we plan to do weekly to help get the word out and also engage people in the lead up. So Neha and Dan are the other two co-chairs under the leadership of Doug Sheppers of the W3C. And Neha, Dan, would you introduce yourselves, and why don't we get right into it?
Go ahead. I'm Neha Narula. Sorry. Yeah, I'm Neha Narula, and one of the co-chairs, as Daza pointed out, also from the Media Lab.
Great. Yeah, I'm Daniel Buckner. I work at Microsoft on blockchain identity systems.
Great. Thanks. And so the reason why we're doing this fundamentally is, first of all, just to get the word out to people that we're having this workshop and to invite them to participate. So I know, Neha, you've really been taking a lead with the program committee and organizing the criteria and the outreach for the position papers. Could you just say a couple of words about how can people get involved and what are these position papers?
Sure. So apologies, I have some allergies right now. So we're asking people to submit position papers or to submit a form which describes who they are and what their interest is in this topic. Doug could probably speak about this better than I can, but the W3C is really an avenue for exploring standardization, and to figure out what the opportunities are in this space. And so it's very early on. I think if you ask like 5 different people what's a blockchain, you get 5 different answers, but that's okay. It's never too early to start, and I think that. And Daza has the website up right now, and there's a link on the website for where you can fill out the form or submit a position statement if you want to participate. And it's going to be maybe around 50, 60 people who are really, really strong in this space, getting together and kind of talking about what the opportunities are for standardization.
Sorry, I went on mute for a moment there. So, I think I'm getting a little feedback from you, Neha. Maybe we can mute when we're not talking.
Absolutely.
Great. So just to be clear, number one, the URL that people can find out more about this and can sign up is www.w3c.org and /2016/04/blockchain-workshop. And when there, if you scroll down a little bit, you can see just what Neha was talking about, how to attend, and you can submit a position paper, and there's a link for that. And then we've also got this somewhat lower key expression of interest, and it's a form that will give you an opportunity to say a little bit about yourself and the topics that you think we ought to be talking about. So there is that. And so Dan, I know one of the reasons why you're a co-chair is because you're doing a lot of work in the space of blockchains and industry, and I was wondering if you could maybe say just a few words about just fundamentally what does it mean to be looking at blockchains, not from a cryptographic point of view, not necessarily from what's great about blockchain point of view, but from the vantage point of interoperability and the web. That's what the workshop's about. Yeah.
Yeah. So the work that we're doing really that our group is interested in is the identity work. The blockchains provide a certain capability that I would argue we haven't had before. All the constituent parts have existed. You could make the argument that proof of work and consensus algorithms existed, peer-to-peer networks existed. So while all the constituent parts of this system that people label blockchain pretty much were already in existence for up to maybe 20 years beforehand, no one really remixed it and put it together in that way. So when you do that and you get it to a certain scale, which it's achieved, I think you have opportunities. And one of those opportunities, when you have a ledger that is maintained securely by people all across the globe in a fashion that's self-sovereign, you can anchor things to it. So it doesn't have to just be about money or value. You can start anchoring what are essentially hashes that stand for people, places, things, anything you want. And so what we're doing is, and you might have seen the announcement 2 days ago. What we're doing at Microsoft is partnering with Consensus and Blockstack Labs, Blockstack specifically, who have developed a system by which you can anchor identities to a blockchain, and now it's going to be cross-chain and own your identity truly. So unlike really any other system that's come before, where you can look an identity up if that identity is a public one, you can prove that you are that identity. That's just something we haven't had, and it goes beyond stuff we've done with FIDO for the web, WebAuth, any of that stuff. It's truly independent, whereas all those other systems are generally either some form of federation centralization, or they rely on an undiscoverable mechanism like PGP keys that you circulate with people. So it's really an opportunity to do something we haven't had before, and so that's why I'm interested in it, and it provides a good foundation for standards that reach beyond what we would typically think of with identity, like just auth and a few attributes about a person.
Got it. Thank you. And so, it almost goes without saying, but I think the point of the Hangouts are to connect the dots and be explicit, because this is a new area after all. In order to utilize blockchain capabilities for identity services and identity functions, one would assume that a lot of that's happening on or through the web. And that immediately calls into question, well, how is it happening in a way that could be common enough that where we could have a sufficient interoperability so that the use of the blockchain could operate in expected ways across different systems and platforms and different types of use cases. And so there's a need for some kind of interoperability, some sort of standard approach to addressing and utilizing the blockchain technologies, which are very off-web right now, for web functions like identity services. Is that about right?
Yeah, I think one of the big issues, and how I see doing the workshop here, and what's possible to standardize in the near and long term. I don't actually think you'll see blockchain primitives standardized, and I don't know that should be our goal, because they're so disparate in how they form transactions and do all sorts of other stuff. So really, the opportunity for standardization, and identity being a good example, is coming up with a layer for all blockchains, for all types of distributed ledgers, that does a certain defined thing. So we've done that with identity by creating a layer where you can roll identities over to new blockchains, to things that aren't even typically called blockchains today, and your identity stays with you, and you have the ability to continue using it even though a chain may go down or whatever. So really, I think those are the inroads to the browser. If it can understand those layers that you build on top of these types of technologies, you don't have to add granular DOM APIs for every little detail about a particular blockchain, which is something you really don't want to do. So one thing, just to spitball, like how does this appear in browsers? I worked at Mozilla for 5 years, and we all sorts of little experiments we would do with extensions. One that I'm really keen on writing as soon as we launch this open source platform is one where you could enter maybe @ and then whatever the call sign was for your blockchain identity. So it'd be like dan.id, whatever you chose, right? And that @ that different form of address that isn't the same as TLDs as we typically know them through the name system today, the browser, an extension at first, would then understand how to look it up. So I could say @dan.id, and it would know, oh, that's the new internet. That's things that are just, that can encompass sites, people, everything. I'll go and look up with the Blockstack resolver, which is open source, how to find the data associated with that. So I think that's one really powerful way that we begin to visualize the blockchain through the lens of the browser.
Got it. Thanks. And so that would be an example. What I was just showing, by the way, is the topics, which you can find at the event website. And so just as like the very first one is, in fact, there we go, workshop topics. Blockchain APIs, and maybe something that would express itself as a service like a REST API, possibly. And then we see the next one is blockchain primitives, which you were saying, maybe that's not necessarily the best use of our time. And part of what's interesting about this is, this is going to be something for you, Neha, is notice that you just said, in your view, spitballing, maybe primitives aren't the best use, and yet primitives are one of the things on the list. And I know people have different opinions about even identity. That that I know you're very into identity, and you've got some things you think would be good. Some people at the workshop maybe Neha aren't necessarily convinced about that. So it's an exploratory workshop, and it's the first workshop that W3C has done on standards. To my knowledge, it's the first serious international standards organization exploratory workshop on the potential for interoperability and standardization of blockchain at this level. That's a sign that that it's okay to come with ideas that are different and to hash it out, as it were, at the at the meeting. But Neha, I know you have other ideas, beyond identity, which is one of the use cases about what purposes could be served by the workshop, and maybe the the role for possible interoperability. Do you mind speaking a little bit about your take on it?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm a little bit more. I would say I'm a little bit more incredulous about identity and what that means. I think a lot of the problems that we have with identity today are very much rooted in the real world and in real world systems. And I think that oftentimes when we talk about identity, we really need to bring things like governments and banks and those large entities into the conversation, because my government issued identity is one of the most important ones that I have. And so then that makes me question, well, if we do need things like nation states to authorize things, then what's the point of bringing a decentralized system into it? But that's sort of that's like a whole nother conversation, and I want to bring it back to kind of like web and sort of what we're talking about right now. I do think that a critical part of all of this is this idea of public key cryptography, and in particular users owning keys and signing things and being able to attest to things and encrypting things, and it really, what it means moving forward, I think, is that we're really, a lot of users are going to be using public key cryptography in the future. They're not just going to be relying on large companies to manage that for them. And so we need to think about more usable systems in that regard. And I think the web is a great place to start to think about those problems and those issues. So, for example, right now there's no way to sort of have your it's called a wallet in the Bitcoin world, but it's not necessarily about money even. But where do you keep your keys? Where do you keep your? And it's not just like one public key and one private key either. It's like a whole system for generating keys. And where's the public key infrastructure live that lets you handle it when you're you lose a key or your key's compromised or something like that. There's a whole system around that, and thinking about doing that in the browser, and thinking about what role in particular the browser should play in that management is very interesting to me. So I think one topic that we're probably going to be talking about at this workshop is the same origin policy, which is the security policy of the browser, which kind of sort of at a high level says that information for different websites, different domains is siloed, and you can't share information between these domains, or at least the web is very careful, the browser is very careful, about what information can cross over these domain boundaries. And that's there for a very important reason. It's so if I visit some shady website, it can't trigger something using my credentials for my bank. Right? We really want to keep that separate. We want to make sure that that's totally in different boxes. But when it comes to this idea of an identity or keys that I take across the web with me, well, that kind of is running counter to the same origin policy. And so we need to figure out what that means and how to deal with that, and what's going to be good for users and what's going to be good for functionality. And so I think that's really where our interests intersect, and where we can start talking about that. At least that's one place. I think there's going to be a lot of different kinds of things that we can talk about at this workshop. It's really about convening a strong group of people who have been working in the space for a while. It's not very old yet, but for as long as you can, and who have a lot of ideas, and just getting them all in the same room together under the W3C umbrella, so that we have a little bit of structure, and we have kind of some topics to talk about.
Thank you. Great, thanks for the mute. So actually Neha and I are in the same building, like right down the hall, but I thought it would be better if we were on different computers, just to set the tone that actually everybody can play. And so we can only squeeze like 60 people into the room at the workshop, but we would like to hear from a lot more. There's a lot more people with blockchain right now, is surging around the world in finance and in so many areas, with good ideas, with experience, who have already attempted to cause interoperability between the blockchain solutions and their existing business systems and other systems. We'd like to hear from all of you in the lead up to the workshop, and to participate and to pose your questions, to throw out ideas of what would be a good candidate to talk about. You can one of the things you can do is go to law.mit.edu, where which is the research page that I host from the Media Lab here, and we've got a /blockchain page that's just dedicated to the workshop in this Hangout series. And if you kind of register to participate online with this little form, then, oh, wait a minute, am I screen sharing right? I may not be screen. Okay, I'm not screen sharing. But anyway, there is a form at law.mit.edu /blockchain where if you fill it out, you'll get emails and you'll have an opportunity to pose your questions and in a more informal way than doing a position statement, offer ideas. And it's all under Creative Commons so that we can repost it, we can use it. And we invite all of you to do that. And some of you, depending on what you have to say, we could invite you for a few moments on one of the future Hangouts to talk directly to some of the speakers or others. For example, we have a very engaging keynote speaker, if I'm not mistaken, that has recently been selected. And I know you just spoke, Neha, but I think it actually is news, and we want to provide some updates and program announcements in these Hangouts as well. I don't think it's on the web page yet, but do you mind giving a sneak preview? Like, who's going to be the keynote speaker, and why do we select them?
Sure. So yeah, I tried to add it to the webpage, but I think it got clobbered. Yeah, so we're going to have a professor from Princeton. His name is Arvind Narayanan. He has done a ton of work in web security, investigating different sort of security models for the web, and also cryptocurrencies and decentralized systems. And so he's going to be able to join us, and he's going to give a little talk to kick off the workshop. So really happy to have that happen.
Sorry about that. I'm on mute. And so it looks like we'll be live streaming this based on the email today with Doug, who's the chair from W3C. Do we have a general sense yet of, or how will the format and the structure of the workshop come together? Do we know, like right now where we're at is we've got position papers. We've posed questions about technology. We pose questions about the areas of application and good potential candidates for interoperability and standards. I guess I should really throw this more up to Dan as well. Could you just describe a little bit about this unfolding process we have for with the program committee for identifying the topics and the format and what participation will look like?
Great. Yeah, I have the GitHub. We published basically a document that goes through and talks a little bit about what the criteria we're looking for are. I'm trying to pull it up now.
I merged your pull request on it. It should be there.
Yeah, I got it here. Okay, so the review criteria that I think we're interested in are, does the paper present a clear topic or set of topics? Is it beyond just some illustrative language about how blockchains are great and they seem like a good concept, or really high level things? Like, are you actually presenting a position that says, hey, I'm interested in identity, I'm interested in augmenting certain protocols that exist in the web or that browsers understand, and getting down to some detail there so that we can clearly identify the topics that are interesting to people. And then does the paper demonstrate a high degree of technical aptitude? So people can say, oh yeah, I'm interested in identity, but what's the brass tacks? Does that mean that you just like the concept of perhaps identity being on a blockchain or supported by that system, or is there any meat behind the bones to say, like, this is feasible, it's something we could actually discuss in depth? And then finally, does the paper cite or support claims it makes, both negative and positive? And I think that's a really important thing, because we could present negatives or positives, and if we don't back them with anything, then it's really conjecture, and I think we want to stay away from conjecture. So things like, oh well, blockchains, they require people to continue running the nodes or else the data's gone. It's like, okay, true, but then again, that's like every server on the planet, right? Like if you don't run the system, the data is gone. So those are like things that are less helpful, right? Like we want to make sure we get to something that is it's not just about being possible; it's about being probable and provable. So.
Got it. Okay, so those are some of the criteria. And do you know, Neha, I kind of feel like in a lot of ways you've taken the lead, or you're our spiritual leader somehow with the position papers, and you've been really like kind of helping to get them in and keeping people focused on them, making it happen. Have you? Where are we at so far? And you know, as we filter them, like what do you envision will happen to take all of the amazing content from that and begin to digest it forward into things that we could talk about? And also, you might put a plug in that it's not too late. There's still time for those of you that are discovering this now to submit a position paper. But yeah, where are we at now with the content?
Sure. I don't know if I'm really taking the lead on that at all, actually, but we have gotten a lot of submissions, definitely at least 40 or 50 so far, with more to come in, and I know that the papers kind of range widely in topics. They all look pretty great. It's going to be a challenge to read them all and to really distill down the topics into concrete things that we can talk about over the course of just 2 days. And I think we're all kind of waiting to see. Like I personally haven't really dug into the position papers yet, but I think we're all kind of waiting to see what comes in, and we're going to take all of that and synthesize it and come up with some kind of a program. And I think what's really cool about this, and what I haven't seen yet at a lot of different conferences that I've been to, is that these workshops are really participatory. And so there aren't going to be a lot of talks. It's not really about giving a talk about what you know. It's really about interacting and having conversations and kind of working on things together. So I think that's going to be really exciting. And I've never participated in an event that was structured that way. So it's going to be a learning experience for me, too, to see how to do that. But luckily, we have people who are going to be a part of it who have done this type of thing before. And Doug being part of the W3C, and I know one person joining us who has facilitated a lot, and Daza, I know you've run a bunch of workshops. Dan, I'm less familiar with your background, but I bet you've also had this kind of experience in this space, and so it'll be really cool to see how it ends up being structured and what comes out of it.
Here, here. Thank you. Yep, and so I think the two words are collaborative and participatory, and I don't mind outing them. It's Chris Anders. No, it's
Christopher Brown.
Yes, my bad. I'm thinking of the next meeting. Who just ran a very successful blockchain-oriented event a couple of weeks ago at the UN. It was part of ID 2020, following this method that I think the general idea is open space is what it's called sometimes, or unconference, and I've really seen terrific results from that here at the Media Lab. Almost all of the legal events I run now follow some version of that model, and it allows us to make sure it's relevant and to really get the best engagement from people and better results as well. And so I think we'll see how it goes, but there may also be some opportunities in certain types of some of the activities through the day for people online but not attending to in some way engage as well. So that will be coming together. But I mean, I am dedicated to that as one of the co-chairs and one of the hosts. And so we will be looking to hear from you in future Hangouts, your ideas of how you'd like to engage and then see what we can achieve. So with that, I guess I'll just like to maybe begin to close it with the purpose and the goals, and the ideal outcome from this will be, after hearing from a lot of voices, to help the W3C to identify opportunities and possible timelines for standardization, related to blockchain. So that's the target. So if you have ideas about that, bring them. Do your position papers, submit them, and not too late. And join us at law.mit.edu/blockchain to, in a more informal way, provide your ideas and questions. And together we can identify the best candidates for standardization of the blockchain. And that is what we will do. That is what we are starting now. So with that, my fellow co-chairs, I thank you for putting the time in on this event and on this Hangout. And until next week, why don't we sign off now, and we'll look forward to seeing everybody again in the lead up, but then June 29th and 30th at the MIT Media Lab for this W3C workshop on blockchains. So till then, thanks. Bye now.